teaching triangle to beginners. Before I teach triangle to anybody, I want to make sure that they've got two key components. The first one is that they've got awareness of how their leg bones move in their pelvis. And the second is they know how to move their pelvis on their leg bones. Without the awareness of those two components, I'm not going to go there. In fact, what I will do instead is help them gain that awareness. Yoga has a history of issues through the SI and the hip. And a lot of it is because people thought that they had hip mobility. They thought that their hips were open, and in fact, they weren't. Triangle, I know it's one of those poses that lots of people want to shelve, but truly, triangle, I believe, is available to anybody. The key is they need to have the base components to be able to do it. So we need to work on those base components. But let's first break it down and see what those components are. So when we're in triangle, or going into triangle, we're wanting to take the legs wide. Simple abduction, right? Well, you will be amazed at how many people move their legs wide, but hyperextend their knees, or anteriorly tilt their pelvis, or poke their ribs out, because they don't have the actual range available of their leg bones in their pelvis. So when we've got our ability to see how these legs move, then we can help a person become aware of what they're actually doing. Okay? Then from here, the next piece of the setup is this leg is moving into rotation, and this leg is moving into rotation. Now, some people teach this to not move the back leg in rotation. That's fine. The key is that there's some rotation happening, at least with this front leg. And the key piece of this is you'll see I'm on my heel. As I bring this foot down, does the pelvis go with it, right? So if we've moved the leg and the pelvis starts to come into a tilt like this, guess what? We've gone too far. This motion, we want to just have this motion be a leg bone movement in the pelvis, and the pelvis is staying level, right? Because all we're doing is we're just rotating this leg bone in the pelvis, and the foot, the position of the foot, is merely in that position because of what's happened at the hip. So we want to drive this movement as a rotation of the leg bone in the pelvis. And if you don't have that, guess what? Triangle is going to be a little bit difficult for you, and you really ought not to practice it until you get that component piece, right? Why bother, right? You're just going to create other issues likely. So I've set you up here. Pelvis is level. The pelvis has moved on diagonal. And then from here, we're now continuing to move through the hips, but this time we're moving the pelvis on those legs. The legs are moving a little bit, but mostly that movement is being driven by the pelvis on the legs. Look at what's happening here. You'll notice that the sides between my ribs and my pelvis, those are staying level, hey? And a lot of times people will teach it like this. They want to do this motion, and because in the history of our practice, people have wanted to keep this long, but if you really watch the people who do this, they end up doing something like this. So they start off being long, but end up shortening up on this bottom side, right? And there's no movement here. And that can create all sorts of strain through the SI, through the piriformis, down through the back of the knee, and into the feet, and never mind what goes on in the neck and the head. Now, this was all in good intention, but in fact, it didn't really lead to the results we're wanting. So when we are able to keep the ribs and the pelvis connected like so, and just focus in on how the pelvis moves on those leg bones, oh, you will be amazed at what will happen. Like truly, truly, truly amazed at what will happen, right? We want to have this here. Now, when I'm teaching trainings, people are typically dumbfounded with how limited their movement is. They really are shocked to think that their movement is actually more limited than they thought it was. There's no problem with that. So much happens under our level of awareness. Our compensation patterns, where we aren't actually moving well. Our body has a terrific way of getting to the end goal in any way possible. And it all happens under this level of awareness. When you can gain the awareness, which is why it's so important for me when I'm teaching someone triangle, they need to have that awareness of how their legs move in their pelvis and their legs, because then we can really work at helping them through that movement and gaining better and better and better function. So make sure that your person can abduct, that they can rotate, that they're clued into what's going on between their ribs and their pelvis, and that then you can start to play with doing this motion of the pelvis on the legs. I hope you've enjoyed that. Stay tuned for more. There's always more coming. Have a great time on your mat.